What? A YouTuber talking about smiling friends? There's so few of those. I am very different, though. I am late. The show has been out for a while, and I was thinking to myself if I even want to like do a vlog about it, because I don't like talk about stuff unless I have something unique I can add to it, and I feel like I do have a little something unique to talk about with this show. For anyone that hasn't kept up, this is a show on Adult Swim, and I got a lot of recommendations for it. A lot of people were saying, man, have you seen Smiling Friends? Have you seen Smiling Friends? It's great, it's great. And I said, okay, I should probably check this out. And every time I saw like a snippet of it, it looked, again, it's not this, but it looked like just another Adult Swim show, if that makes sense. And I have nothing against Adult Swim shows, but there is kind of a style and a pattern that does repeat itself. And it's a funny style, it's a funny pattern, but you do see a lot of it. So it kind of looked like that to me, and I said, all right, but a lot of people are recommending it, I should check it out. And then I really wanted to check it out when I heard that James Rolfe was in an episode. So what I did, anything James Rolfe is in, I want to check out. So I saw the first episode, which was very funny. It had the dude from Red Letter Media in it. It was very, very funny. And then, because this job keeps you very busy, I cheated, and I just looked up what episode James Rolfe was in. I'm like, all right, let me just go to that. And I watched that, also very funny. I said, okay, I'm good. Like that seemed like a good show. Cool, I'm just gonna get back to other stuff. But then everybody, like YouTubers and people online, just kept praising this show so much that I said, okay, I must be missing something if it's getting this much praise. And I should probably go back and watch the whole thing. And that's really the reason I want to do this little vlog here, is because if anyone else has started watching this show and gave it an episode or two and said, yeah, that's okay, that's good, but let me go watch something else. I think I get the gist. You really don't. This is one of those shows that really reminded me, it's gonna sound like a weird comparison, of Bob's Burgers. Because the same thing happened to me with that, where I saw a couple episodes, I'm like, that's good, that's okay. But everyone kept praising it, and as I kept watching it, I saw what made it so special. It's something where the impact of it, you kind of have to experience over time. And thankfully, it's not too much time. This isn't a show that has to necessarily, reach out and grab you right away. It's something where the characters and the ideas are so strong and so good, they don't, in a weird way, they don't need to grab you in that first couple seconds. They don't need to win you over with perfect jokes or anything like that, even though the jokes are funny. The setup, if you're not aware, is these two characters. They just live in this odd land, again, it's a very Adult Swim land where kind of anything can happen. There's this very simple style to it. And all they want to do is make people feel better. Their literal job, is to make people feel better. It's kind of like a demented Care Bears, where they get a call and somebody's not feeling well or is suicidal or something like that, and they go and try to cheer them up. Or someone had a problem with a date or something like that, and they go cheer them up. And naturally, stuff goes wrong. But what makes it unique, that if you stay with it, you'll see this pretty quickly, is that one, the animation style, which again, at first glance, looks like just another Adult Swim show, a style that you've seen a million times, but they mix it up a lot, and you realize one of the reasons they give them such a simple style is so they can really have fun with different types of animation, types that really do demand a lot more time. There's a CG in this, there's stop motion in this, there's homages to other styles. There's a really funny one where they pay homage to The Hobbit, and they just make this character look like the Rankin Bass Hobbit for no reason except that it's supposed to take place in a fantasy world, but it really helps the story and characters, and most of all the jokes. The ending of that episode in particular is just so funny when you see what the Hobbit's backstory is in this. But the best comparison I can make to this is that it's kind of like World of Gumball, only for adults. Now, World of Gumball, I like that show. It's a very funny show, but it's clearly for kids and adults. This is just for adults. No kid should watch this. This is clearly just for grown-ups. And even though I like something like Gumball that, can kind of hit everybody, it's very imaginative and does the same thing where it uses different types of animation, it has a very, kind of positive, upbeat center with, a likable main character that likes to make people feel good. And, things usually go wrong in Gumball with that. With this one, they not only go wrong, like, they'll result in deaths. They'll result in, like, the most horrendous stuff. And there is something nice about taking this idea that, thankfully was made for families, the World Gumball and stuff, and was done very, very funny. But there is something really gratifying about having it just for adults. And what really opens up with this is not only the likability of these two main characters who are kind of polar opposites. You got a little purple dude who's always, gosh darn it, let's go and find out what we can discover and make people feel better. And another one who almost feels like he's there, like he did something wrong in prison. This is like his payment for it or something like that. Like, he doesn't want to be there, but, he'll do it. He's not like the worst character or anything by far when you see all these other characters. So there's already a good setup of these two opposites that, yes, you've seen in other stuff, but they are very unique with the voice acting especially. They really work well off each other. And then with the unlimited amount of places and characters they can encounter, because they also incorporate an unlimited amount of animation possibilities. There's one scene, I don't scare easily. I especially hate jump scares. I think they are so boring and they never get a jump out of me. They don't accomplish their job pretty much. But there is one, I think, like in the Halloween episode of this, where I legit jumped. And a big part of it was because the animation style changes. I guess I won't give it away, but it's the reveal of this creature, and they keep cutting back to in these little spurts, and because it was not an animation style I was expecting, or a design I was expecting, I legitimately jumped, and then they would keep cutting back to it, and I would still be like, man, this thing's intimidating, but then when you get to the end, they really hold on it for a while, and you can see kind of how funny this thing is designed. Like, it actually has a very comical design, and it is so rare I discover something that both kind of gets me scared and laughing at the same time. Like, that is really, really rare. And I'm not talking about, something like Evil Dead, is very funny, but it was never scary to me. Or I can watch something else that's really scary but not really funny. Like, the two rarely clash where it's like an equal amount. And I legit, was looking at this thing but I'm also laughing at just the sudden style change, and that when you see all of it for a long amount of time, it's actually very funny looking. This is something where I forget how many episodes they have, like maybe 10 or 11 episodes, and it has such potential for so much more that can be done in this world, because the humor is not limited to anything, because it's for adults, it's on Adult Swim, and the styles can go wherever it wants. It's very surreal humor. But it's something where it's actually got a good base at the center. I really love shows, and just stories in general, where someone's trying to do something that's really noble and really nice and really sweet, and it just never works, or very rarely works, or something always goes horrendously wrong. I really like Eek the Cat had a similar setup. But again, that it could only be for kids, even though they try to get a few, kind of little jokes for adults in there and stuff. So it's nice to see something like this that really does have kind of this sweet, humble base. It just happens to take place in this really terrible world. And even the characters have flaws to them that kind of makes them more interesting. There's the one that finally won me over. I think it's like the third episode with, was it Shrimpina, I think? And I won't give it away, but, but if you've seen it, you know why this episode is so funny. There's a lot of funny twists to it that, again, you've kind of seen in other shows, but you haven't really seen it with these characters. Like the little purple guy is doing something that's a little despicable. It's kind of like a bad thing to do, but even he's really having trouble with it. And you kind of go, oh, geez, I don't know, any other Adult Swim show would probably just be well, they would just play this up only for the jokes, and this guy just turns into a total bastard. But the fact that they do have him really thinking about what he's doing and the consequences of what he's doing, and he has a conscience, really does pull you more into the strange world, and it doesn't just make it about the jokes. But on top of that, A lot of the characters in this, some have normal voices, but others just have such bizarre ways of speaking that, again, is very, very much like an Adult Swim show, but the way they make them deliver these lines is so strange and so odd that it's really hard not to laugh at, and I think the shrimp character in that just had such an eerie, almost uncomfortable way of saying everything, but it just was so funny. And I think that's the one that finally won me over, because I'm like, man, just every time this shrimp talks, I'm laughing. Like, so it'll have a good setup, that kind of works when you really think about it, but then just on a very silly primal level, where you just go, oh, that voice sounds funny. It's making you laugh. My Python did kind of the same thing, where sometimes there'd be like layers to the joke, and other times it's just like, no, this is just silly, and we do silly well. So I think there's really something to be said about like how many different varieties of humor they're working into this, that, like I said, if you discover this show, if you start watching it and you say, oh, that's good, but not for me, whatever, stay with it, because the more you watch it, the more you'll realize just how really solid not only the idea is, but the characters are. And I'm really excited to see more of the possibilities of where this show can go. I mean, everyone's talking about, or has been talking about, again, I'm really late to the game, but I'm really excited to see like what other animation styles they can do with this, and what other like weird adventures these characters can go on, and what we'll discover about these characters as well. And again, they just keep them very simple. It's not always like this deep psychological dive or anything, but they're just likable enough, and they put in just enough twists to where you don't unconditionally love them, but you don't unconditionally hate them either. There's this strange relatability to them where you want to know what's going to happen to them, but I like, it's not like one is always good and one is always bad. I mean, they set up very early on that there are kind of layers to them. So I like that too, because that reminds me like in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, where like in the first act or the end of the first act, the two characters will have their big blow up, and they usually save that for like, the end of the second act or beginning of the third act, and they got it out of the way. So I kind of like they're acknowledging that early on, like, no, we're not just going to do one is good, one is bad, or one is always a B, one is always a sourpuss, that there are already sort of things chipping away at them that make them a little different than what you're expecting. And usually that's, say, for like a second season or a third season, but they got it out of the way. So now it's like, well, okay, well, where are they going to go with this now? And are they even going to go with it? Are they going to go in a totally different direction? It seems like a show that can just completely change everything up in a millisecond. So yeah, it's one of those where I kind of wanted to make this just in case there's anyone that had an experience like me where they just watched one and said, okay, that's good enough. Really stick with it. The other thing I'll say about it is that I shouldn't say unlike other Adult Swim shows, because there's a lot of great Adult Swim. There's a lot of great Adult Swim joke. I can talk today. There's a lot of great Adult Swim shows. There we go, weird tongue twister for some reason. That, of course, are still going, like Rick and Morty and so forth. So I'm not at all dissing Adult Swim shows. What I'm getting to is that there was a show that came out a while ago, I think it was called like Mr. Pickles, and I just saw the first episode and it made me laugh so hard. I think you can watch on either HBO Max or Hulu or something like that, and it just slayed me. I said, oh my god, this is one of my new favorite shows. I watched the next episode, it's exactly the same. Oh my god, that's great. And then by the third episode, they kept doing the same thing, and I realized, man, this can only go on for so long until you gotta change up this formula. And it was a brilliant formula, but there's only so long it could go. Where I think something like this, the setup is very familiar, but you can really do a lot with it. You can really, really explore with it. So I think that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying like just another Adult Swim show, where even if it's good, it's what's the long-lasting power of it. Rick and Morty, two characters that go on sci-fi adventures, and one's cynical and one's a doofus. I mean, you've seen that a million times, but the way they develop the characters in the world, you can really explore and expand with it. And it's the same thing with this one. I think these characters are really solid. I think the idea is really solid, and there's just so many places you can go with it, and so many great jokes you can explore with it, and so many parodies and homages and stuff like that. So I'm really excited to see where this goes. If you did start watching it, and maybe you thought it was okay or wasn't grabbing you, really give it a chance. It's really worth it. I don't even know if you need me to tell you that, because everyone's been praising the hell out of it, but again, it's just in case you had an experience like me, where, like I said, it definitely didn't start off bad by any means. I didn't entirely grasp how good it was just from the first episode. And again, these are short. They're like 11 minutes, so a lot of these shows need time anyway, but in today with streaming and stuff where you don't have to watch something at a specific time, you can watch it whenever you want, it is easy for stuff like this to fall through the cracks. So this is worth the time. This is worth looking into. I think I'm pretty sure this is from some of the same people who are on Oni Plays. Like, I know I've seen these names somewhere, and I'm pretty sure I saw them from that. I think the style looks very similar, and if you don't know what Oni Plays is, you got some homework to do, man. I have made several appearances on there, and I am so good at making those appearances, I didn't even need to show up or voice anything. Like, that's how powerful my presence is. So they've done some stuff with me on there, like the Nostalgia. It's very funny. If you're watching me now, you've probably seen them, honestly, but just in case you haven't, they're very funny. But it's a similar animation style, and one of the things that people have been saying is that, man, it's like sort of like those old school internet cartoons, like the early days of the internet where kind of anything was possible and they would experiment with a bunch of different stuff. I think like Robot Chicken started off as kind of like these little internet shorts, and we've seen that happen before, where something starts off as an internet short and it gets its own show. But this one really does have a callback to those early days because you just don't know what's coming. And even in terms of the story and characters, take that out of it, just the style, you don't know what's coming. So there is kind of this real excitement for that, to see where the show is gonna go. And I guess I don't want to overhype it as like, it's like the next Game of Thrones or something like it. It's not, but who knows? It could change and just suddenly go that route. That's one of the fun things about the show. It could just totally change styles. So I'm definitely highly recommending it. If you haven't checked it out already, if you only checked out a little bit, watch the whole thing. If like 4 or 5 episodes in, it's not grabbing you, that's probably not going to grab you, but I think by the 3rd or 4th episode, you're going to see why this is different than a lot of animated shows that are streaming right now, and it's definitely worth your time. So that's about it. Don't worry, I'm going back to the Untitled Review Show. I'm not going to, you don't have to look at this wall too long. I'm just going to do this for like little vlog reviews and stuff like that, if just suddenly I want to talk about something while it's on my head, but yeah, we got more Untitled Review shows coming up, so don't worry about that. And if you've seen this show, what do you think? Do you really like it? Do you get into it? Did it not grab you? Did you go through the same thing where it started off like, yeah, this is good, but I've seen this stuff before, and then it really grabbed you and you realized like why this was so good? Or did you pick it up right away? You knew this was a great show? Or do you hate it? Does it just not grab you? I'd love to know your thoughts on it, and I will see you next time. Take care.